The 10th station, Jesus is stripped of his garments. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read, "After they had crucified him, they divided his garments by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him." The Gospel of the Lord. The room smelled of urine and feces. This was years ago, during the height of the AIDS epidemic. Back then, medical science had identified this horrible virus, but at first there was no effective treatment. And there was so much fear. Family members and friends worried that they could become horribly sick just from casual contact with someone. Some medical professionals even asked, if I care for someone who has the virus, if I go into their room at the hospital, can I be infected? Perhaps that's why this man, in his late 20s, had been relegated to an isolated room at the end of the hospital corridor. His family had not come to visit him. They blamed his impending death on what they called his sinful lifestyle. It was a hospital chaplain who asked for a priest to come and administer last rites. When I walked in, the room smelled of urine and feces. The young man was on the floor, covered in excrement. And this former college wrestler, who now weighed less than 80 pounds, well, he was naked. I quickly went to the nurse's station and demanded assistance, and then I went back to the room, and I told the young man that the nurses were coming. And with a very weak voice, he pleaded, "Cover me. I don't want the ladies to see me naked. Cover me." This young man knew that he was dying. But for him, in that moment, there was something even worse than the thought of physical death. He did not want to be humiliated. Cover me. Don't let them see me naked. Have you ever been humiliated or afraid of being humiliated? In a very different way, I recall being invited to a sleepover with some fellows from my elementary school. We had fun that evening, and then finally everybody went to bed. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and realized to my horror that I had wet the bed at my friend's house, and I didn't know what to do. Finally, I just woke up the fellow whose house we were in, and I told him what had happened. And he laughed so hard that it woke up the other boys. And then when they found out, everybody was laughing at me. His mom came in. She helped me to change the sheets. She helped me to get cleaned up, but my face was red the entire time. I was humiliated in front of my elementary school friends. Sometimes the source of our humiliation is beyond our control. You're diagnosed with a serious illness, and suddenly you find yourself in a hospital where medical students who look like they're about 12 years old are now walking into your room at all hours of the day and night, examining every part of your body. Or you make an honest mistake at work, and the boss calls you out in front of everybody, and you want to say in your own defense, everybody makes mistakes, but you're humiliated. Or perhaps the humiliation comes as a direct result of our choices. You've been cheating on your spouse, and then everybody finds out, including your children. Humiliation. You commit a crime and your mugshot appears on TV. Humiliation. Or the college student I met in Scotland who told the story of how he went out drinking with his buddies and he had way too much scotch and he blacked out. And the next morning he woke up on somebody's back porch and he was only wearing his underwear. The old woman who owned the home came outside, covered him with a blanket, and told him that the police were out front. Humiliation. When the Romans perfected the process of crucifixion, they had one goal in mind. They wanted to humiliate the criminal. If their goal was simply to kill the criminal, well, frankly, there were far quicker methods they could have used. Stab the criminal with a sword, decapitate them, very quick, very efficient. But killing the criminal was only part of the goal. What the Romans really wanted to do was to humiliate the criminal. And they did it very well. Like Jesus, every criminal sentenced to crucifixion had to carry their cross, or at least part of the cross, through the streets. Every criminal was stripped of their clothing. Especially in Jewish communities at that time, public nudity was an embarrassing, humiliating experience. Their crime was written on a sign which was displayed on the cross. You see, the Romans wanted the physical suffering to last as long as possible, and then hours later, they broke your legs. And finally, it was over. Why did the Romans want crucifixion to be both deadly and humiliating? Well, we have to remember that crucifixion was ultimately a form of control. It was a way of saying to the local population, if you mess with us, if you disobey us, then what's happening to this humiliated, crucified person is going to happen to you. If you threaten us, you will have to drag your cross through the streets. You will be stripped of your clothing with no one to cover you. You will hang there for hours in excruciating pain. That threat of deadly public humiliation worked very well. It was one of the ways that the Romans kept people under control. No one wants to be humiliated. No one wants it. But Jesus was willing to experience it. Jesus freely chose to embrace this suffering, this humiliation. He was willing to experience the most horrible parts of human existence. He was willing to be stripped naked on Calvary. Why? Because he loves us so much that he chose to go through all that we will ever possibly go through. And Jesus does this so that on the day when we find ourselves on the floor naked, when we find ourselves red-faced with shame at a sleepover, when we are humiliated by life's mistakes and circumstances, when we feel like we're standing there embarrassed, uncovered, ashamed, we will know that we're not standing there alone. In those moments, Jesus, who himself was humiliated, is standing right next to us. The risen one is standing next to you, declaring, not even this humiliation will have the last word in your life. And that risen Lord invites us to respond with compassion whenever we encounter a sister or a brother who is humiliated. And perhaps with God's help, we can cover their shame with Christian compassion.